Hey guys, Cecil here once again. In today's video I wanted to talk about a handheld system that I think over the years has kind of been overlooked, underappreciated, and kind of just overshadowed by a lot of the other big handhelds that have come out over the years, and that's the Neo Geo Pocket Color. So to give you a little bit of background on the system, let's go back to 1998 in Japan, about 12, 13 years ago. At that time, Nintendo was pretty much, as they've always been for several years now, been the top dog in the handheld market. In 1997, they had just released a scaled-down version of their black and white Game Boy called the Game Boy Pocket. It was pretty successful. In 1998, SNK decided to throw their hat in the ring after having their Neo Geo console and releasing the Neo Geo CD in the mid-90s. They wanted to test their, handheld making skills and see how well they'd do. And they came out with a 16-bit portable called the Neo Geo Pocket. And it was quite a significant upgrade in power for the time compared to the black and white Game Boy. And it was kind of mildly successful, wasn't really, it was just kind of there, really didn't sell all that great, but it had a lot of good games. Also in that year, 1998, Nintendo decided to release a color version of the Game Boy called the Game Boy Color, which as you probably a lot of you know, went on to be quite a successful version of the Game Boy. And SNK, seeing a color version of the Game Boy, decided a year later in 1999 in Japan to release the Neo Geo Pocket Color, which was basically just a color version of their already 16-bit Neo Geo black and white Pocket. Wanting to try and expand their market, since the Neo Geo Pocket wasn't doing all that great in Japan, they decided to release in the fall of 1999, around the time the Dreamcast launch, was the Neo Geo Pocket Color in America. It came out with about a handful of games, and it really didn't do all that great initially at launch, and honestly it really didn't do all that great in its short life, but for what did come out, it was probably on the market for roughly 9 months. I would say probably from August 99 when it launched till about May or June of 2000. And in that time, like I said, a lot of really good games released. I think if you've ever heard a really big fan of the original Neo Geo, you say how many really good games it has. Well, the Neo Geo Pocket, it had a lot of great fighting games. It had card fighters games. Just a really good, couple versions of Metal Slug. Pretty much any major SNK franchise, there was a really good version of on their portable handheld. So when I went out and I had heard about it, and a couple months after it launched, I think it was October is when I picked mine up. I actually found them at Walmart of all places, and I thought, Walmart, why would, most places you'd probably to get a handheld like this, you'd have to go to a specialty store, more like a gaming store, like a GameStop or a Software Etc. And the local GameStop here at that time was called Software Etc. And they were one of the few places in town that actually had Neo Geo Pocket hardware and software to sell. But Walmart, they didn't have any Neo Geo Pocket games, but they did have the consoles, and they actually, and this is where I got my Neo Geo Pocket Color. It was $100. It came with Sonic Pocket Adventure. Here's the box and everything. I thought it was pretty awesome. Compared to what at the time when you just had the Game Boy Color, this was quite the step up. This was the most advanced handheld at the time by far. And just kind of taking a general look at the Neo Geo Pocket Color, it's just kind of it was a blue version of the system. I think there were like 6 different colors. I got the platinum blue. There was like a couple of camo colors. I forget all the specific ones, but it's just got your A and B button, an option button, which is kind of your start select button on the system, and it's kind of, instead of a D-pad, it's kind of got a clicky little analog stick. Now, if you've ever held a Neo Geo or Neo Geo CD controller, this is quite a lot like that. SNK decided to do an analog stick instead of the D-pad, and that was actually kind of cool for the time. Again, that is something you'd never seen on a handheld before. And cartridges, they pretty much look like this. They're a little bit larger than a standard Game Boy Advance cart. Compared to like a Game Boy Color cart, you can see, maybe about halfway between a Game Boy and Game Boy Advance cart in size. They came in little plastic clamshell cases, and yeah, it was just a great handheld overall. I as soon as I got one, I was looking for games for it. I wanted to pick up more games for this, because like I said, it was $100, and for me, being 19 years old, $100 wasn't exactly a drop in the bucket. But like I said, the only place in my town that you could find them was Software Etc. And needless to say, every opportunity I could get, the games were about $30. I went there and picked up a new title, and I got a handful of games for it. I kind of wish I had had an opportunity to pick up more, but I was a broke college student at the time, and I think a lot of you young people who are in college and high school can understand that. But I did pick up King of Fighters R2. It's a good King of Fighters mini version. If you've ever played any of the King of Fighters games, it's pretty much just along the lines. Just all the characters are more in chibi form, and that was kind of the prevailing graphical motif on the Neo Geo Pocket Color for a lot of their fighting games. Was they kind of had chibi versions of their console brethren on the Neo Geo, which was okay. I mean, they were still really quality fighting games. There were two versions of Metal Slug on the Neo Geo Pocket that I picked up, Metal Slug version Mission 1 and Metal Slug Mission 2. I mean, if you've ever played a Contra or Metal Slug game, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. These are really fun run and gun games. I picked up Baseball Stars. It was okay. I think the reason I got this one was because they didn't really have a lot of new games out at the time, and this one was a little cheaper than the others. It's a pretty good arcade-style baseball game. Nothing really to write home about, but a lot of fun nonetheless. Also picked up a couple of other fighting games. Samurai Showdown 2, which is just basically like King of Fighters R2, just with the Samurai Showdown franchise. And probably my favorite game on the system that I own, which is Capcom vs. SNK Match of the Millennium. What's kind of cool about the Neo Geo Pocket was at the time they had kind of done something with the Dreamcast, where you could there was a link cable that was made where you could literally attach your Neo Geo Pocket through the link cable to the back of your Dreamcast, and you could transfer information between a handful of games. Like on Match of the Millennium, you could transfer it to Capcom versus SNK on the Dreamcast, all the points you'd earn in SNK versus Capcom, and it actually made it like unlocking a lot of like characters and colors and everything in Capcom versus SNK on the Dreamcast a lot easier, because you could earn more points much faster on SNK versus Capcom on the Neo Geo Pocket. There was a few other games that supported it. I know King of Fighters R2 supported some data transfer between like King of Fighters 99 and Evolution on the Dreamcast. I know Cool Jam. This is the one Neo Geo Pocket import game I own, Cool Jam. You could transfer information to Cool Tune on the Dreamcast. I unfortunately don't have that that transfer cable. A friend of mine did, but I never was able to get one, unfortunately, and I really kind of regret never being able to pick it up. I saw it a couple times. It was like $35-40, and I think that's what kind of held me back, just because it was kind of expensive. And even though I had a lot of the Dreamcast games and Neo Geo Pocket Color games that supported it, I just kind of put it off. And by the time I would have probably been able to pick it up, the system was discontinued. And kind of going along those lines of why the system was discontinued, at the time in early 2000, SNK was kind of struggling financially. They really weren't making a lot of money, trying to support their handheld system in two territories on top of their consoles. And unfortunately, they just went bankrupt. And they had kind of recalled a lot of their hardware and everything. And in June of 2000, they literally send it. They were telling all their retailers, like at GameStop and Software, etc., please send it back. We want to rebuy this stuff, because I think they were going to send it to other markets where the system was still going to be supported. And some GameStops went ahead and did that, but I know a lot of gamers at the time that had Neo Geo Pockets, they were literally going to every GameStop they could find in their area and saying, please let me buy what games you have left. I want to make sure I get these games, because they love the handheld so much. I would almost kind of call it the handheld version of a Dreamcast, even though it didn't last very long. There was just such a really strong passion and support for it at the time. Now, what was kind of cool, a few years after the system had been discontinued, I think it was 2003, I forget what company did this, but they actually kind of re-released the system. It was kind of in a plastic sealed case, and it was a system, and it came with 6 games. I forget what the 6 games were, and I forget how much they were selling it for, but it was kind of like Majesco when they re-released the Game Gear, and they put out a few games. And so that kind of breathed a little bit of new life into the system. But what was kind of disappointing about it is they eliminated all the boxed Neo Geo color games. It was just the system and 6 games in their plastic clamshell cases. They didn't come with the box or the instructions or anything like that. So it's really, I've never seen, since the system was discontinued, not that I've looked all that hard, but I've honestly never seen a lot of Neo Geo Pocket Color games still in their original American boxes with the instructions in the cases. So if you run into a game store and you see like a boxed Neo Geo Pocket Color game, because it was kind of cool, they just was like the box art cover was on the front and it would open up, and then you had your instructions and all the other little stuff, and the game would pop out right here. So I mean, this is pretty unique for the time. And like I said, I really haven't seen it. The closest thing that you see to this nowadays is the Nintendo DS. with their clamshell cases and everything. So, but yeah, if you see a box Neo Geo Pocket Color game, this is from when the system was originally out for the 9 months or so it was out in America, and these aren't very common. So I would definitely recommend picking them up if you can. Kind of talking about the hardware itself a little bit. A couple cool features, like I said, besides the the kind of clicky analog stick. There's an internal memory. If you can see right there, that's where a CR2032 camera battery would go, and it lasts for a while. You can basically you boot up the system, and it'll go up to a menu, and you can set the time, the date. You can enter your birth date. You can set it as an alarm clock, and it'll even tell you your horoscope. I can't really show it on here very well because it's not a backlit screen. It runs on 2 AA batteries, which lasts a decent amount of time. I would say a good 15-16 hours of battery life. So you get pretty good battery life, but you have to really have good lighting for it because, like I said, it's not backlit. But yeah, a lot of these features. I mean, I think the Gamecom had a lot of features like this, but it took Nintendo, I think, with the DS. I mean, the Game Boy Color or even Game Boy Advance never had an alarm clock or a calendar or a horoscope or anything like that, not until the Nintendo DS came out in 2004. But yeah, that's why I just want to say, I mean, if you get a chance, the Neo Geo Pocket Color, I think there's about 25-30 games released for it. I'd have to go look online to look at the specific number. There weren't a ton of games released for it. I wish I could have picked up more, and I've been meaning to, but I want to try and find box copies, but they're just so hard to find. But most of the Neo Geo Pocket Colors you'll see these days are probably the re-release that was done in 2003. So you'll only see the system, with the games in the clamshell cases. You won't find the boxes. But if you don't mind that, the system is actually really affordable nowadays. It wasn't very popular, and even today, I think a system and a few games wouldn't be more than $20. And so yeah, definitely give it a shot. I mean, the version of Sonic they got, I mean, compared to the Game Gear games, this is, until probably Sonic Advance came out, this was the best portable Sonic game ever made by far. It was a good mix of Sonic 2 and 3. So just like I said, a litmus of great games on the system. I can't say any more good things about it for the limited library it did have. I mean, especially if you're a big SNK fan and you haven't had a chance to track one down, I would strongly recommend you doing so. But yeah, that was kind of my look at the Game Boy Pocket Color, or Neo Geo Pocket Color. Boy, I can't talk today, can I? So yeah, let me think. Have you had a chance to play it? Have you heard about it, but you never really gotten a chance to play it? Have you always wanted to, but never got the opportunity? Let me know what you think of it. Are there any other handhelds out there that you want to sing your praises for? Do you remember the old Game Gear? Do you ever own a Wonder Swan or anything like that? So leave me your feedback down below, and I'm definitely looking forward to hearing what you have to think about this system and what you thought of it. So I just wanted to share that little bit of history with you from my gaming background. I mean, like I said, I love this handheld to death. I've actually been meaning the last few years to try and get back into collecting it a little bit more. I just been buying other things, which is kind of silly. But anyways, you guys have a good one. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time.